What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm also going to break down what's happening to the overall market this far, what you should be watching for as time progresses, what's happening with the overall scenario right now around the world involving Israel and Iran, and what's happening with all the data coming out as well. But before I break into devil's information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I am personally not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Weeble link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Weeble and deposit $500, you're guaranteed 20 free stocks. If you deposit $25,000 or more, you're guaranteed 75 of them. And the offer ends very soon in just 2 weeks. Anyways, for the market right here, you can see that SPY has a new range that is developing. We have this support around 502.5 to 503. We have resistance around this 506 area. We're going to be watching to see which way this ends up breaking. So it's going to be very important to watch this. We're also going to be looking at some news and stuff before I break down these charts. So I'll be talking later on about Tesla, Nvidia, and all the tickers, but I first want to talk about some news and such. So with this whole situation between Israel and Iran, it's very, very intense. And this is a big issue for the markets. The markets wanted this to really ease off, to cool off, but it's still remaining very tense and very, very heated up right now. So that's very important because with this happening, this is causing more downwards pressure for the markets and more fear, and the market is still very, very weak because of this. So, what's been happening is Iran launched their attack. It was a retaliatory attack against Israel. They launched over 300 missiles and drones. Israel managed to intercept the large majority of them, 99% of them. But after that happened, Israel does not want to back down despite warnings from the US and other countries out there. Israel, when it comes to its war cabinet and also its chief commander, they're all coming under saying that they want to retaliate against Iran after everything that happened, and that's not the best of news because if they do end up doing so, it's going to just be a back and forth battle. Let me just say that I'm not giving you guys a history lesson on how this all started. That's not my job right now. There's so much more history behind this. I'm also not going to paint anyone as the aggressor. You could just argue whatever you guys want to do in the comments. That's completely fine. I just want to say that right now, that's what matters for the market. So whatever is happening right now, what's happening right now is that the situation is very tense. It's continuing to escalate, and then that could lead to lots of other issues. If you want anything to say, just leave it in the comments, guys. You can say whatever you want. I respect your opinions. But because this is very tense, it's a little bit negative for the markets. It even caused Jerome Powell to change his words a bit. So Jerome Powell spoke today. I was giving you guys a warning about this. When he spoke, he said that so far there's not been like major progress in inflation meeting the Fed's targets. The Fed is open to the possibility of keeping rates higher for longer, being a little bit more hawkish if necessary. And he was saying that there is a possibility that external factors, that could cause inflation to remain as is. He mentioned that that's a possibility. And if that were to be the case, the Fed has to be prepared just to be safe. He did imply all of that. He didn't promise anything about what they're going to do. He just said all of this hypothetically. And he mentioned that the Fed has to be very, very open and prepared for what's about to come just to be safe. He mentioned that if inflation remains elevated, they have to continue to, keep rates higher, and they're prepared to do that just to be safe. So that's what Jerome Powell said. He kind of changed his tone with this whole situation. The market kind of popped after he said some of those things, then dropped back down. The market's still kind of down. For tomorrow, there's not a whole lot of data coming out. We just have the 17-week bill auction coming out at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. At 1 p.m., we have the 20-year bond auction. Then we have the Fed Beige Book, which is just a report on how the economy is doing at 2 p.m. Besides that, we just have a couple more Fed speakers later on. That is pretty much it, at least for the time being, in terms of all this data. That is it, at least for Wednesday, which is going to be tomorrow. There's nothing too crazy coming out for data. For earnings, we had Bank of America and Morgan Stanley. I talked about these in the morning. They both did relatively well, especially Morgan Stanley. This got a very, very nice beat on EPS and revenue. We saw good guidance. Net income was good. Their deposits were good, even better than that of Bank of America, in my opinion. So they did relatively well. Nice little bounce came to them. And then for right now, we just had United announce its earnings. For tomorrow, we have ASML. We also have US Bancorp, not to mention Discover. But for right now, we just got United. And so far, the share price is up despite some not so great things. So United Airlines has slashed the 2024 aircraft delivery plan as the Boeing crisis is leading to more delays. Despite that, they beat EPS and revenue. Their EPS was a loss of 15 cents versus a loss of 57 cents adjusted, but the revenue was 12.54 billion, better than expectations. They also expect to post earnings between 3.75 and about $4.25 in the second quarter, which is ahead of estimations, which is not bad whatsoever. They also have a full year guidance of about $9 to $11 a share, which is better than expected. So not bad whatsoever. Good, I would say guidance, but they did slash some of their delivery plans despite having decent projections. So the share price is still up despite that, especially because they beat EPS and revenue. Not bad whatsoever from them. For the overall market, the fear and greed index is currently at fear. We're starting to see more fear developing in the markets. Market momentum is at neutral right now as it's starting to dip. Finally, this is the first time this happened in a while. And simultaneously, the puts and call positioning is at extreme fear. We're seeing fear dictate the current sentiment in the market. We're seeing a lot of people starting to turn into big bears, worrying that there's going to be more downside. Market volatility is also going up right here. You can see the VIX has gone a nice breakout above its 50 daily moving average, and we're approaching the 20 resistance. Overall, guys, the market is still looking relatively weak because of all these signals. I'm also going to be continuing to monitor the price of crude. This is also still at this high of $85 a barrel. It might start going up higher. Gas prices could go up if Israel continues to respond and we continue to see a back and forth between these countries. So I'll be waiting for that as well. So that being said, guys, let's talk about the markets. Let me just make it very clear that overall the charts are still bearish. If you look at the daily time frame, the overall trend is bearish. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that this means we're going to crash. I'm just saying we're bearish right now. But let me just clarify a couple of points. Now, I do believe personally that SPY is going to come down and fill this gap all the way down to 497. Okay, I think we're going to come down to 497 to fill the gap. However, however, I don't know for sure if we're just going to fill the gap instantly. There's always a possibility we get a little rebound first. We see this thing try to get like a dead cat bounce, a small little rebound first before we end up getting that gap fill. So those are the two possibilities. Either we get a little rebound and then we fall to fill the gap, or we just drop from here to fill the gap. It's got to be one of those two. I'm not 100% sure because it depends on the news involving Israel and the other countries out there. So I'm going to be watching this in a very, very concise manner. Basically, we have a range on SPY, a very, very nice range. We have resistance at this 506 area. We have support at 502.5 to 503. If we lose 502.5, there's going to be a bigger dip coming all the way down to 500 and then 497 potentially if that fails. If we lose the support, the low of the day from today, and we continue to hold below it. However, today you could see SPY was trying to base here. As we dropped, we saw some buyers trying to defend it. So there is some life and some potential for it. If we break above 506 tomorrow, we're going to be looking for one more push to get to about 508, if not 510, and then we could reject and start dropping back down to 497 or so. So I see the possibility that this could get a little rebound first before we end up dropping, but that's going to depend a lot on this news. Does Israel continue to maintain its structure, its claims that it wants to do another retaliation attack against Iran? We'll have to wait and see if that ends up being the case. I personally am in the middle right now. We have a nice range on SPY. Either we get one little pop if we break resistance, we could get one more push up higher, and then we could start falling later on to 497, or we could just fall from here. Excuse me, I apologize, guys. We could just fall from here. So it really depends. It really, really depends on what news we get out tomorrow and how we end up breaking this range. The best thing to do is watch the range. Do we break past 506, get one more push, and then collapse? Or do we end up just losing support from here? I'm going to be watching this very carefully, and I still want to let you guys know I'm bearish overall. The trend is still bearish. 497 is coming on SPY, but I don't know if we're going to get one more push up first before that happens, or if we just get it from here. So just watch and see in real time just to be safe. Okay. Don't run around just shorting for no reason, thinking, "Oh, we're going to collapse." When we always have the possibility of getting one more little push before that happens. We'll just have to wait and see. The market could be very tricky sometimes, so just wait and see, and we'll see which way we go from here. Part of why I say that there could be a little rebound is also because when you look at the QQQ, it's starting to uptrend just a tiny bit today. It had a low during the pre-market at 429. Since then, it's been uptrending slowly. So there are two possibilities, okay? If we break the high at 432.9, like almost 433, I could see a move all the way up to about 435 to 436. There could be one push up to 435 to 436 and then a rejection and a move all the way back down to 425 because just like SPY, the QQQ also has a gap to fill. So I think it's going to fill the gap to 425. Okay. I believe it's going to fill this gap all the way down here. But I don't know if we're going to just collapse and just go straight down to 425, or if we're going to get one more little rebound, we rebound a bit to 436, go a little higher first, and then we get that move back down, right? It's got to be one of those two possibilities. All right. So, with that being said, there's always the possibility that SPY and the QQQ try to rebound a little bit first, and then we get the big move to the downside. That's always going to be a big possibility. Looking at the current chart right now, this is looking like it's trying to bounce right here. I'm seeing sub signals that suggest that on the QQQ. I just need to see what happens tomorrow if we could try to break above our 20 EMA. If we break this, I could see 436 coming, a little attempt to rebound, and then we end up collapsing. If we fail to break 433, then we could just collapse from here. So watch and see. I see us dropping to 425 on the QQQ, but we might get one push first before we get that drop. So watch and see if we get one more push before the drop comes, or if we just drop from here. I want to be very, very blunt in the process of saying that. Tesla has a nice gap to fill all the way down in the 146 area. So with that gap on Tesla, it's going to likely come all the way down to 150 again, if not below that. But before that happens, we could see an attempt to bounce because we're forming a nice wedge right here. We saw Tesla grab liquidity all the way down in the morning, down to 153 before coming back up. And it looks to me like if we manage to continue to hold this structure, I could be looking for a move back up to about 160 or so. We have a nice gap to fill up here, so it might come back up to try to fill this gap at 161, shuffle in the 162 to 160 area, and then we might drop a little bit later. But I think that there could be an attempt to rebound at very, very temporary little bounce before we continue to fall lower. That's a strong possibility on Tesla, but we need to see good news on Tesla. We need the news to be decent, and we don't want to see the whole market collapse. So, once again, I think Tesla will drop to 150, but we might first get a little rebound before we come back down lower. I want to make that as clear as possible. We are due for this, at least from a technical standpoint. So, watch your levels just to be safe. If we lose 155, we're going to turn bearish. If we break past 157, we could try to push higher. I think we might try to push a little higher, retest this resistance, and then come back down lower later on. I find that's to be a lot more probable. Onto Nvidia, we could see something very similar. Now, Nvidia might try to retest 881. If we break through this, we could see this thing trying to go up to about 892 one more time before we end up dropping. But ultimately, I do see this falling all the way down to fill its gap in the 820s. We might fall to 820 very soon, okay? I do see us dropping all the way down there. We have 834 first and then the 820s. But we might pop first before that move comes. We might see one more attempt to go higher to fill this imbalance up here beforehand. So it might push a bit and then end up dropping or just drop from here. Either way, I see those as strong possibilities. On to Aapl. Aapl is nearing a bullish cross on its PPO. It came all the way down to about 168. We could see this attempt to go higher towards 170 to 171. It might go a little higher first and then start dropping all the way down to 167, or it could just drop from here. So, in my personal opinion, with this imbalance that's kind of like forming up here, we might see Aapl try to test its 20 EMA. I could see a move up to about 170 first before it starts to collapse lower, or it could just drop from here. I favor a little bit more that's going to push higher first before we get the big drop. So I'm still open to that possibility. We'll see what news comes out and how it ends up performing, but watch for that very, very carefully as we got this big drop today. With that being said, that's it for the main five I typically go over. Now let's just talk about the other tickers out there. I think the market has more downside coming. I still hold that same view. My view has not changed. But we'll see if the market gets a little attempt to rebound. If you look at one example, we have Supermicro getting a breakout after some bullish news. This ended up breaking some key resistance. This could push up to fill this imbalance all the way up to about 1,000. Once we reach 1,000 to 1,020, that range up there, we could shuffle a bit and then eventually drop back down to our 200 EMA at 940. So it might push up first before coming back down. I could see 1,000 to 1,020, and we'll see how it goes from there. So it could push a little bit higher. For Rivian, we're going to be looking for a test of 8.94. I could see a little attempt to rebound as well on this, but it also depends on how we end up reacting. If we lose 8.67, look for a move all the way down to 8.2. If we break past 8.94, look for a push all the way up to about 9.2. My gut tells me it might go a little higher. It might actually try to fill this imbalance at 9.2, and then come back down. So we're going to be watching for that very, very carefully. SoFi is not looking that great, but it is trying to rebound a little bit, just like Rivian has a very, very similar setup. If we break 7.28, look for a push all the way up to about 7.38 to 7.4. That's where our 200 EMA happens to be. If we lose 7.18, look for a move all the way down towards 7 flat. My guts tells me it might try to push a little bit and then reject and come back down lower later on. The trend is still bearish, but there could be an attempt to go a little higher beforehand during the pre-market, so watch for that very, very carefully. Onto the IWM Russell 2000. If we break past 195, we're going to be looking for a push towards 197. Could push a little bit higher and then reject and eventually drop to 192, or it could just drop from here. I have a feeling it might actually try to go a little higher, retest 197, get a little tiny little bounce before we continue lower. But just to be safe, watch for that on the chart. AMD is also showing a little bit of potential. We're attempting to break past our 50 EMA. We'll see if it breaks or not. If we break through this, I'm going to be looking for a test of this imbalance. We could go all the way up to 166. Maybe we get a temporary move to the upside because this is also resembling like an inverse head and shoulders. We push up to about 166 and then we reject, or we could just push up from here temporarily and then make a move lower. But that's what I'm seeing on AMD. There's some potential for an inverse head and shoulders. We have to break past resistance at 164 just for confirmation. If we lose 162, I'm going to be looking for a move back down to 160. My gut tells me it's going to push up higher though before it comes back down. So watch for that. On ARM is attempting to push higher. Going to be looking for a test of about 122.9. If we break this, look for 124 and then 126. If we lose and we end up projecting off 122, look for a move back down towards 120. I think that we could push a little bit higher towards 124, and we'll see how it does from there. But ARM is not in a particularly strong place right now. We're actually on a big downtrend, so it may make a lower high right here, come back up to like 124, then reject. So I'm seeing some potential for that. For Coinbase, look, it's trying to bounce right here as well. You guys can see it actually closed and managed to get above its 20 EMA. So if we hold above 220, I'm going to be looking for a move up to 231 tomorrow. Right? I could see that. It could get very close to this previous support becoming resistance and then reject back down if we approach 231 to 236. If we fail to hold above 220, we're going to be looking for a move all the way back down towards like 210. I think that this has potential to go a little bit higher before we get some kind of rejection, but I still see potential for this to try to bounce just a little bit. I see a little potential there. For this is Amazon. We're looking a little bit weak right now. Might retest 184, but it's gonna likely shuffle for some time. Uh, I think it could attempt to rebound just a little bit. I do see a little potential for that. Might retest 184 to 185 and then come back from there. I think that we're going to get a 50 EMA retest, if not a 20 EMA retest as well. Then come back down. So it's not looking as strong, but I do see some potential for that. Meta could try to retest 504 to 505, that range. And if that breaks, look for 509 to be retested. It is possible it tries to retest and then rejects and drops lower. We reached our support very close to 496.5. This is previous resistance becoming support. So we reached the support zone I had marked right over here. It could rebound first and then continue lower later on. I do see Meta dropping all the way down to lower levels as we have this imbalance at 490. We might come all the way down there later. Might pop first and then drop down. So we'll just have to wait and see if that ends up being the case. For Microsoft, it's the same thing. We could try to push back up to 419 and then reject back down. 418 to 419. If we end up holding above our 200 EMA, if we lose 413, we're going to turn bearish. We're going to be looking for a bigger move back down. It's about this this is like 410 area. I have a feeling it might try to rebound first before it comes back down. So watch for that very carefully. For Google, we're kind of tight right now. If we lose support at 155.8, there's going to be a bigger dip coming all the way down to about 153. If we manage to rebound, we'll look for 157 as resistance. It is possible to retest 157 in range trades for a bit, and then we eventually lose support and start sinking. So watch for that very carefully as well. For the VIX has been on a very, very nice uptrend. It's still looking strong overall, but the 4 hour is trying to turn just a bit. So it is possible the VIX comes down a little lower as the market tries to rebound. We could see the VIX retest 17.44, if not 16.18 if that fails us. It looks to me like the VIX is going to drop a little bit because of SPY potentially seeing a little rebound first before we end up getting a lower low later on. Also, the 10-year Treasury yield is still on a very, very nice uptrend, especially after what Jerome Powell said. We'll see how it reacts to about 4.7. I'll give that a little bit more time. We're going to give this a little bit more, I would say, patience for now. It's still bullish. Same thing on the dollar, but we're at resistance at 106.5, so we'll see how this reacts. If we reject, we're coming back down to 105.96. I'll be watching for that as well. So what am I saying? Am I a huge bull in the markets? The answer is no. I think that's the market has more downside coming ultimately. I think that SPY is going to drop lower to 497 in the future. However, it is possible we get a little rebound first. We could see this retest 507, if not 510, one more time. It might get a little rebound before we get that downside. So we'll see. Will SPY collapse from here and go down to 497, or rebound to get a little rebound first before we end up getting the move to the downside? Those are both possibilities. I do think it's possible we get a little rebound first before we drop lower, but we'll have to watch for confirmation just to be safe and continue to see what happens on the news, because the news is affecting the markets big time, and that could be a little bit difficult to predict. All right. So that being said, thank you all so much for listening. Have an absolutely incredible rest of the day, and I'll see you guys very soon tomorrow morning for the next update. Thank you once again, and peace out.